Nobody asked me if I wanted to exist. Yeah, one day, boom, there you are, and you think to yourself, why am I here? Well, what do you think? Is there a reason we're here? Do our lives have any real significance?
Well, that depends
On what?
on whether or not God exists.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying that my life has no significance because I don't believe in God?
No, not at all. I'm saying that if God doesn't exist, it doesn't matter what you believe. Our lives would have no objective meaning, value, or purpose. Many atheists themselves recognize this. If atheism is true, life is absurd.
Okay, and why do they think that?
To begin with, if God does not exist, then the physical universe is all there is. Which means you and I are just accidental byproducts of nature.
Right, so?
That means we were not intentionally designed. So there's no purpose for us being here.
Whoa.
It gets worse. If God does not exist, there is no absolute standard of moral value. You've heard of Richard Dawkins, the atheist. He points out that in a materialistic universe, there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference.
So you're saying atheists can't be good people?
No, I'm not saying that. Many atheists live good lives. What I'm saying is, atheism fails to provide an objective basis for saying any particular action is good or evil.
Oh, come on. After millions of years of sociobiological evolution, humans have developed a sense of morality. We all know it's good to feed a hungry child and bad to torture someone for fun.
Of course we do, but that's precisely what atheism cannot explain. If there's no God, then what we consider right or wrong is nothing more than an accident of evolution or a human social convention.
So what? I'm good with that.
Really? Evolution implies survival of the fittest, not morality. And social convention means that racism, intolerance, and cruelty are not really wrong. They just happen to be unpopular.
Okay, so atheists need to come up with some objective standard for rights and wrongs. How about this? If an action leads to human flourishing, then we can say it's objectively good. And if it doesn't, it's objectively evil.
But why think that human flourishing is good? Aren't you being species-centric? Why not refer instead to the flourishing of rats or cabbages?
Well,
And who gets to decide what contributes to human flourishing? Hitler was convinced killing millions of Jews would promote human flourishing. And Margaret Sanger thought forcing poor people to be sterilized would lead to human flourishing. As Kai Nielsen points out, pure practical reason will not take you to morality. So if atheism is true, there is no legitimate basis for saying that behaving one way is worse than behaving any other way. So it really doesn't matter how you live your life. Your day-to-day choices are meaningless.
that's depressing.
So if there's no God, what happens when you die?
Well, nothing. You simply cease to exist.
Right. So one person lives a kind, generous, thoughtful life. Another lives a horrible, violent, selfish life. It doesn't matter. In both cases, the outcome is the same: nothingness. So how can their life choices have any objective meaning?
Well, it's certainly meaningful if I discover a cure for cancer or save a child's life.
I agree completely. But atheism can't explain why. Scientists predict that eventually the whole universe and mankind with it will die out. So everything comes to nothing. That's why atheist Bertrand Russell says we must build our lives on the firm foundation of despair.
No thanks. I'd rather live a happy life.
You're not alone. Every atheist has to choose between being happy or being consistent. You can tell the whole world you're an atheist, but you can't really live like one.
Okay, so you're a Christian. If your God did exist, how would that change anything?
If Christianity is true, then each one of us is here for a reason. And life does not end at the grave. And God, He's the absolute standard of goodness. He knows you, He loves you, and He intentionally created you. So your life ultimately does have objective meaning, value, and purpose. That means you can live a life that's both happy and consistent.
While that doesn't prove Christianity's true.
Agreed. I'm simply pointing out that for Christians, living a life that is both happy and consistent is possible. For atheists, it's not. So what are you going to choose?
All right, so we have been in this series this is our 5th week. We've been talking about faith and reason. So if you're just kind of jumping in, we have tackled some different arguments concerning arguments for the existence of God. And I'm not going to rehash all of those in depth. So you can go to our website, bridgewayamelia.church, and check the other sermons out. I'll just kind of recap what we have covered. We have covered the cosmological argument and the teleological argument. Cosmological dealing with creation of the universe, and then teleological being the fine-tuning of the universe. So our arguments have been if there's design, there must be a designer. If something is fine-tuned, something must have fine-tuned it. And we also talked about how the video started out. Is there a meaning or a purpose to this life? So I talked about that a few weeks ago. And again, we're looking into these arguments because it's important for us as believers to know why we believe what we believe, and then to have arguments in our toolbox. Remember the toolbox illustration. You may not be using these arguments all the time, but it's important to have them, important to know them, because we're going to have different starting points with people. And in an ever-increasing society that is skeptical, you need to have different starting points of how to reach people with the gospel of Jesus. And for some folks, we might need to give them logical, reasonable points to believe that God exists in the first place. So again, like the video is saying, these arguments don't get you necessarily to Christianity just yet. They get you to theism. What gets us to Christianity is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He's the one who ties it all together. He's the one who tells us who the fine-tuner is, okay? But if you remember the chair illustration, intellectual assent is giving people reasons to sit in the chair in the first place. But faith is sitting in the chair. So we've got to have different starting points with different people to help us engage the world around us. So today we will tackle the moral argument for God's existence. But first, let's go back to our main text where we start each and every week. 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 15. But in your hearts regard Christ the Lord as holy, ready at any time to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that when you are accused, those who disparage your good conduct in Christ will be put to shame. Lord, help us to open our minds, help us to understand these arguments, Lord, that I believe point us in the right direction. Help us to engage our friends, our family, or even strangers who they're at different starting points, Lord. Maybe we need to start with the cosmological argument or talk about fine-tuning or even the moral argument. But ultimately, we want them to come to faith in Jesus Christ. So that's our prayer today. We love you. Pray in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago about the puzzle box. That life, it's like this puzzle that we're trying to piece together, but to do it without the top, where you have the picture, makes it much more difficult, because the question is there a unifying picture to make sense out of the puzzle that is this life? Remember, the 4 areas in which we're dealing with is origin, where do we come from, meaning, morality, and destiny. And I believe everyone has a worldview, and so they have a way they view these 4 items, and they're trying to put the pieces of that puzzle together. But I believe Christianity has that unifying picture, and that's the God of the Bible. And so we're trying to get people to see those pieces of that puzzle, but we want them to understand what the unifying picture is. So let's talk about this moral argument. I'll break down the premise here. It says simply, if God does not exist, objective moral values, laws, or duties, however you want to put it, do not exist. Objective moral values do exist, therefore, God exists. So let's ask the question, Brent, what is an objective moral value? I'm glad you asked. Objective moral values are qualities like kindness or love, which are morally good, independent of the belief of human beings. It also asserts that things like murder and rape are morally evil, independent of the belief of human beings. They are true for all people, in all places, at all times. So we're saying that there are objective moral laws that are just as real as the podium that I'm holding to right now. They are real no matter what anybody else believes. They are real in all places, at all times, for all people. Now, we kind of take this for granted as normal, functioning human beings. This is just stuff that we assume, like kindness is good and murdering people, that's a bad thing. So you don't have to be a believer to do good things. Just like, the video was talking about. That's not the argument. The argument isn't, okay, can an atheist be good? Yeah, they can be good. The argument is, can there be such a thing as good without God? Can there be such a thing as right or wrong without God? And we believe that as created beings by Almighty God, it is written within us. We know right from wrong. It's not something that we determine. It is something that human beings discover. We don't get to determine right or wrong. We get to discover it. Look at Romans chapter 2 in your Bible. So when Gentiles who do not by nature have the law do what the law demands, they are a law to themselves, even though they do not have the law. They show that the work of the law is written on their hearts. Their consciences confirm this. Their competing thoughts either accuse or excuse them. So Scripture here is telling us that written on the heart of man is a knowledge of right or wrong. We are different than all other created beings. We are made in the image of Almighty God. Why is this significant? Well, let me give you an example. You guys watch nature shows? Anybody like nature shows like Planet Earth? They're really cool. And sometimes in these nature shows, they're following lions around, and it gets kind of violent. It's kind of cool, actually. But what disturbed me one time, though, was there was a male lion who took over a pride. And the first thing the male lion did was kill all the cubs, every single one of them. And this is what male lions do when they take over a pride, because they want to ensure that they're passing along their genes and not the other guys. What didn't happen was the safari guy didn't arrest the lion. I know, that would be stupid, wouldn't it? It's a lion. It's doing what by nature it does. It's not held to a standard or have this objective morality. It's just an animal. We're contending that humans are more than just animals. Like if a guy marries a woman and kills her children, we would say that's wrong, right? Like at any place in the world, at any time in history, that will always be wrong. Even if society said, oh, that's not that big, it would always be wrong, and we know it. It is written on our hearts. Again, we take these things for granted, right? Like, Brent, this just sounds kind of morbid, but that's the reality of it. There are things that all people, like, you don't have to believe in God to say these things are right or wrong. Like, they're written on your heart. There will be at no point in time in history, in the past or even in the future, where anyone could say that torturing a baby for fun would be a good thing, right? I know this sounds crazy, but what it is, we know deep down inside that that's wrong. There is a moral law written on our hearts. And if someone were to say, well, that's not that big a deal, what would we think of that person? You're absolutely crazy. If someone were like, oh, it's not that big a deal, torture babies for fun, we'd be like, you're nuts, dude, and you're not babysitting my kids. It's written on our heart. There's a law of morality written on our heart, but laws just don't come out of the blue, right? There's a law maker, and we are contending that God is the one who is that standard of ultimate good, and the one that is written on our hearts what is right and what is wrong. He is the law giver. Laws do not come as products of nature. They have a source. God is that source. As one professor put it, everyone knows certain principles. There is no land where murder is virtue and gratitude is vice. No land whatsoever where murder is going to be considered a good thing. It is always evil, no matter what. C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said, think of a country where people are admired for running away in battle, or where a man felt proud of double-crossing all the people who had been kindest to him. You might as well try to imagine a country where 2 and 2 made 5. Such a place doesn't exist. It's insanity. Everyone knows this. So if there is an absolute moral law, then there has to be a lawgiver. Now, if there is no God, then everything I just said that is evil isn't really evil. It's just someone else's opinion versus someone else's opinion. It's like we don't murder and do these things because they're not popular, but they're not really wrong. You see the slippery slope there? You see how it would be very hard as an atheist to live consistently with your worldview, because your worldview is dictating that objectively there is no such thing as right or wrong. I think you really have to live in denial, because deep down we know there is such a thing. C.S. Lewis, in his journey to faith, said this. Of course, he started out as an atheist and became one of the greatest Christian philosophers to ever live. He said, my argument against God was that the universe seemed so cruel and unjust. But how had I gotten this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? So he's saying, how did I know it was mean and cruel and wrong? What was I comparing this to? You don't know a line's crooked unless you know what a straight line looks like. And what we are contending, and what C.S. Lewis contended, was that God is that straight line. He is the one that we look at and we say, okay, what I'm doing is not right. He is the objective, moral law giver. So written upon our hearts is this belief, this deep down, I believe we know that what is right and what is wrong. Now, there are alternatives people try to explain that was mentioned in the video. For example, that morals are a product of Darwinian evolution, but you can't get morality from Darwin, simply because the theory has to do with the survival of the fittest. So if you're not the fittest, it doesn't really matter. You can be disposed of. And these ideas, if mankind is if you're just an accident, if you're not even supposed to be here, those ideas have grave consequences. To believe that mankind, you're not even supposed to be around. Those ideas have consequences. Hitler, who ascribed heavily to Darwin's theory with his supreme race, in his book Mein Kampf, he said this: if nature does not wish that weaker individuals should mate with the stronger, she wishes even less that a superior race should intermingle with an inferior one. Because in such cases, all her efforts throughout hundreds of thousands of years to establish an evolutionary higher stage of being may thus be rendered futile. But such a preservation goes hand in hand with the law that is the strongest and the best who must triumph, and that they have the right to secure and endure. He who would live must fight. Again, he's laying the grounds for what he's going to do to Germany here. He who does not wish to fight in this world where permanent struggle is the law of life has not the right to exist. These ideas, they have consequences. Now, some would say, yeah, but did you know Hitler was a Christian too? Yeah, I mean, he totally lived by the Sermon on the Mount, didn't he? That whole love your neighbor as yourself, he kind of skipped over that one, right? I mean, some of the arguments for that, like Christianity was responsible for the slaughter of the Jews, is just absolute insanity. Now, was Christianity maybe hijacked by Hitler and used? I would say so. Because he certainly didn't adhere to the teachings of Jesus Christ. He certainly did adhere to the teachings of Darwin. There is a stronger race and a weaker one. And the weaker one deserves to be annihilated. You don't get morality from natural causes. Now let's assume for a second, because the other question is, well, maybe society is what determines what's right and what's wrong. Actually, before I get to there, I want to quote one other guy. He's a Princeton professor. His name is Peter Singer. If you've never heard of Peter Singer, probably a good thing. This guy, who is an avid Darwinist, believes that the life, and I'm quoting him here, the life of a newborn is of less value than the life of a pig, a dog, or a chimpanzee. He has contended for infanticide, saying that you should be able to kill your child up until 28 days after it's born. If you don't want your kid, you can just, and this is a Princeton professor, so he's real smart. But his points of view as an atheist are consistent because that child has no value to him. He values monkeys more or values his dog more. When you reduce human beings to simple animals, then you really have no value. But I think deep down we know that's insane, right? We know that we have value. We know that we're unique. We know that deep down, I think even a guy like Peter Singer is living in a deluded state because if he is just a product of random mutation and chemical reactions in his brain, why should we even listen to anything he has to say in the first place? There's no sanctity of life here. But we know the opposite is true. We know humans are more valuable than animals, right? I mean, when you're driving on the road and there's a dead deer on the side, you don't like pull over and try to give it mouth to mouth or something, do you? I know that sounds so stupid, doesn't it? Especially if it's like a skunk. It's like a good luck. Why do we do that? However, if someone's in an accident, what do we do? If it happens right in front of us, what do you do? Like, oh, I got to get to my appointment or I'm going to be late. No, you don't do that. You get out of your car, you run over there, and you check and see if there's anything you can do to help. Why? Because humans are valuable, and they're valuable because they were created by Almighty God. There's a purpose to your life. God gave it to you. You're not an accident. You're not here just from random mutations over long periods of time. You have purpose, you have value, and it comes from Almighty God. You're not just some animal. Yet we're supposed to believe this in the society in which we live. And then, as I talked about a couple weeks ago, we wonder why my generation, the millennials, and even worse in Generation Z, our suicide rates are climbing. Anxiety is rampant. In the most prosperous, comfortable, just wealthy society to ever exist. What do we have so much anxiety for? Because there's heart issues. And my friend, I'm not trying to cheapen. If you have anxiety, you can be a Christian and struggle with anxiety. You can be a Christian and struggle with depression. And I'll give you a few pieces of advice real quick. One, you first lean on your Lord. Second, lean on your faith family. And third, lean on your doctor. They're there to help you. They are. I get ticked off when Christians are like, well, if you're depressed, you're just not close to Jesus. I don't believe that's necessarily true. And there are some times where we need to go to a medical professional to help us. Like, you don't come to me when you have a broken leg, like, hey, Pastor Brent, I broke my leg. Like, oh, that stinks for you. I will certainly pray for you and support you and mow your grass if you need. But if you've got some mental health problems, get those addressed. And we will love you, and we will support you, and we will talk with you, and we will listen. But I do think the rise of these issues in our society is that when you tell people over time that you're nothing but an accident, well, they don't say it like that, Brent. Well, close enough. There is no purpose to your life. What do you think's going to happen? You're not an accident. Does society determine what's right and what's wrong? No, it does not. If society determined, if the majority determined what was right and what was wrong, then what Hitler did was just a matter of opinion, because in 1930s in Germany, they pretty much agreed. The Jews are less than human. Now, did all the German population know exactly that they were being exterminated? I don't think so. I had a neighbor that lived in Nazi Germany. She grew up during that time. She said they didn't really know what was going on, but they did know Jews were less than human. When you reduce people to such a degree, when society says they don't deserve anything. So do we go with the majority on this? No. Even if Hitler had won the war, it doesn't make what he did good. It's always going to be wrong. Always. So let me recap here, and then I can't tell what the clock says, so I don't know what time it is, because there's a glare on the bottom of it, so you guys are in deep trouble right now. Oh, that one doesn't have a glare. Doggone it. I have two of them in here. Let me give you a couple points to remember, then I want to show you a clip, all right? The reason I'm showing you these clips today is I want you to check these ministries out, like reasonablefaith.org. My goal in this series is just to whet your appetite, to dive into these arguments a little more in depth. This should not be the extent of your study of apologetics, because you will be lacking greatly. I'm just trying to whet your appetite, right? So the first video was from reasonablefaith.org, great website. You're going to see a conversation from Frank Turek, of crossexamine.org, and I've been to his lectures where he goes to the universities and he gives his lecture, and then at the end he allows students to ask questions, and so I'm going to show you one of those real quick that has to deal with morality. But points to remember: there is an absolute standard of right and wrong that is written on the hearts of every human being. We do not get to determine it, we discover it. It's within us. Relativism is false. Human beings do not determine what is right or wrong, we discover right and wrong. If human beings determined right, asserting that rape, murder, and the Holocaust or any other evil is not really wrong. So if it's just relative, then it's just survival of the fittest, and these things aren't wrong, they're just maybe unpopular, but we know deep down they are wrong. Number three, there we go. The moral law must have a source higher than ourselves, because it is a prescription that is on the hearts of all people. Since prescriptions always have prescribers, they don't arise from nothing. The moral law prescriber, God, must exist. So if there's a moral law, there's a moral law giver. The moral law is God's standard of rightness. It helps us to adjudicate between the different moral options people may have. Without God's standard, we're left with just that, human opinions. The moral law is the final standard by which everything is measured, and atheists have no basis for right and wrong. They cannot justify it. It's not that they can't do right things. They cannot, through their worldview, justify right and wrong. Let me give you an example real quick.
Hello, I'm Nathaniel.
Nathaniel.
No, so you make three specific arguments for the existence of God: a creative argument, an argument for design, and an argument for morality. I first off would like to try and take down the argument on morality.
Go ahead.
Because it's not actually an argument for the existence of a God, it's the argument for the fact that we should have an idea of an existence of a God, because otherwise there would be no moral basis from which we could sit on. And I disagree with that, because I feel that humans are inherently altruistic and moral.
Okay, all right, stop there for just a second, Nathaniel. What do you mean by altruistic and moral?
We are giving and we care about each other.
Why is that good?
Why is that good? Because it helps our species survive.
Why is it good to survive?
Because then we can propagate and move on as a species and continue to exist.
So why is that a good thing? Who said?
Why is that a good thing?
Yeah.
Because that is what it is.
Well, that's an is. That's not an ought, though. Stalin would say, fine, Nathaniel, I'm going to survive by killing you and taking your stuff. Why is he wrong?
Because Stalin would have the initial urge not to. He would feel that the inherent urge of humans is to be caring for one another. There are situations where humans will not be caring about one another, and those are exceptional. But because humans are inherently altruistic, his first urge would be to take care of the person or try and help them. But if he has some motivation against that, then he would no longer have that urge. And he would decide that he wants to kill them because he has a reason to.
Well, again, I think you're begging the question as to what altruism is. Why is taking care of others a good thing if there is no God? That's your opinion. Is there an external referent, an authoritative, unchanging referent that you're getting that opinion from, which makes it objective, or is it just something you feel?
Humans, so if you take it from the stance that this is something that is consistent throughout humanity, that we care about one another, then we could superpose that as a moral impulse that we have.
Okay, let me agree with you. I think we do have a moral impulse. And that's exactly what C.S. Lewis said in The Abolition of Man, when he looked at all the diverse cultures and he said, they agree on basic morality. Now, how do you explain that basic morality? Well, there's maybe different ways to explain it, but some will say that's because God has written it on our hearts. But the issue isn't how we know it. The issue is, why is altruism, as you put it, or caring for one another, a good thing? Who said?
It's not necessarily that who said, it is what is. We are altruistic. There is no need for someone to say that it is a good thing. It is what we are.
But if Hitler or Stalin comes along and says, I don't want to be altruistic, I want to be selfish and take everything for myself, and if I have to kill you to do that, I'm going to do that, why is that objectively wrong?
Because he is not taking care of other people.
Who said it's... Where are you getting this standard this objective standard that you ought to take care of people? Where does that come from if there's no God?
So I'm just going to talk about a little example that I know of and some others. So there's 3 different points I'd like to make. First off, we still exist. If we did not take care of each other as a social species, we would have very, very limited capabilities of still existing. We need to band together. We need to take care of each other. We need to be friendly to one another.
That's presupposing that survival is a good thing. Why is it a good thing? And why us surviving? Why not roaches or antelope or black widow spiders?
Why do you need the concept of good there? We're still surviving, and we're being nice, kind to each other. We are being caring for one another.
Forgive me, Nathaniel, but you're stealing the standard of goodness from God's universe to try and make your worldview work. But if there is no objective, authoritative moral standard beyond us, then atheism doesn't work.
You know, I think you're right. There is something to that. The idea of good and evil is in a lot of ways a religious concept. But why do we need that?
Well, it depends on what you mean by religion. I'm just talking, you can leave religion out of it, it's a loaded term. Let's just say the source, ontologically, which means the study of being. Where does morality come from? Are you an atheist?
Yes.
Okay, are you a materialist?
No.
Okay, so you believe in immaterial reality, that's good. How do you explain immaterial reality if there is no God?
Could you define immaterial reality?
Oh, let's just take the laws of morality. It's right to take care of people. It's right to love. It's wrong to murder. Where does that come from?
That's something that is ingrained in us in our behaviors.
That's how we know it. And let me agree with you that maybe there are different ways we can come to know it. If evolution is true, maybe evolution has helped bring it to us. Maybe our parents taught it to us. Maybe society taught it to us. However, my question isn't how we know it. My question is, why is it right to love and wrong to murder objectively? Because, you know, we went to the Nazis and they said, oh, we're just obeying our government. And we said, you had a higher obligation to obey the good rather than your government, and you failed, so you're guilty. So where does this higher standard come? Where does it come from? What is it ontologically?
So to some extent, this is an interpretation of, and I'm probably going to screw this up, but this is an interpretation of why we exist. And so we come from a long lineage of life, and so in order to honor that, we must continue to live. And so to be kind is to honor that life that we have. And life is all that we have.
Okay, I agree with what you're saying here, but you're importing terms, moral terms like honor and good, into an atheistic system that has no way to ground those moral terms. That's my point. Let me ask you another question. I'm going to ask you the question.
He's going to give him
I
a
said I'd
book,
ask
so
you.
you can just.
Christianity, where truth
The next one,
becomes-
his book, I don't have enough
Yes.
faith to be an atheist. You should check it out. But you can see how the moral framework in atheism to justify good and bad doesn't exist. And the question we're trying to ask with all of these arguments really is, what's the best explanation for these things? And I believe God is. God is the best explanation for where we come from, to the fine-tuning of the universe, to the purpose of this life, and to the morality that is written upon our hearts. And our goal is to be able to teach others that truth. Again, these get you to theism, but our goal is to get them to Jesus. So I want you to be thinking about someone that maybe struggles with belief in God, and say, hey, Lord, help me cross paths with them today, and lift them up to him. So bow together. Let's bow together. We are out of time.